Okay, another guy with a face. Awesome. Love it. Mr. Ringleader dude.
You were face to face with the daughter of House Whiteley. The Whiteley family. Pray, why didn't you bring her here? Think of the reward on her head.
So you come to escort nobles under the auspice of family business, abduct them, and then demand a ransom for their safe return. And you accomplish this by hiring the starving and destitute for a few shillings, such that even if they are apprehended by the law, you can sever ties and remain free. That's how you've been running your game all this time, yes?
Akechi found himself in the lair of the criminal ring responsible for the abductions that had become the talk of London. I mean, well done that man, but also... He observed. No means of escape. No clear weaknesses. His hands were bound with coarse rope, and the katana remained in their possession.
You think you're a clever one, eh? Not clever enough to keep your mouth shut. Or not even clever enough to know the danger you're in. Besides, as I see it, I'm giving those with nowhere to go and nowhere else to turn a chance to earn a living.
Those bereft of home and employment, whose each day is a struggle to see tomorrow, act in violation of the law in order to eke out their existence. No matter where one travels, the reasons men turn to crime remain remarkably consistent.
As though to punctuate his words, the rope that bound Akechi's hands fell to the floor. Dang, that's some skill.
How did you...
Placed in his hands was a file so small and slender that one might have mistaken it for a pen. There were no clear weaknesses, yes, but quite a few hidden ones.
Damn, boy!
The leader leveled a firearm at Akechi. A finger pressed lightly against the trigger. Go! Oh, dang. This guy is tough, man.
Bah! You dare to use my own man as a human shield?
Akechi braced himself, interposing the man who held his katana between he and the ringleader.
An observation, if I may. Wasn't taking hostages your expertise?
You cur! Then I shall just have to kill you and him both. Or did you think yourself enough to fend us off alone?
Ah!
Compared to my homeland, the people here are freer than they realize. How peculiar that the psychology underpinning why those who commit crimes do so is no different here or there. Your excuses are also lacking.
Oh, dang. Sorry, I gotta get a look at this sword. Yeah, nice. Akechi's katana was now on the ground after his hostage dropped it. He reached down to reclaim the weapon with the deliberative air of one far removed from danger.
Whatever crime I should happen upon whilst here, I will solve it. Justice will be swift to any perpetrators. Doing so may give me a place to call home, a place where my efforts will be noticed. If even that eludes me, then risking my life to travel to Engelsch after being abandoned in my own land was an act of futility.
Light played off this drawn blade of Akechi's, seeming to shimmer even when the room was so dim.
To be plain, I don't wish to kill you, nor will I hurt anyone more than is necessary to subdue them. I've talked long enough. Allow me to show you.
Kicking the man behind, whom he had been shielding himself forwards, the boy launched himself towards the ringleader, sword at the ready. Meanwhile, I hope Akechi is all right.
I'm sure he is. You'll never find a man more prepared for a situation like this. He always keeps a file with him that he brought from home, too, so that ought to help.
I don't know what it was, but nothing Kobayashi said gave me comfort. My concerns were amplified when we arrived at our destination and could hear a cacophony of shouting within.
We should telephone Scotland Yard first. Wait till...
No more waiting! Akechi is inside now!
Kobayashi! Wait!
You mustn't go, my lady. It's too dangerous.
I will leave contacting the RTU, Pendleton. Oh, man. Guys, your impetuousness, though. Kobayashi was right. Waiting? Waiting was to waste, and we could not afford to waste our seconds. I gripped my skirt and ran.
There he is! Right there!
It didn't take long for us to find him and his abductors. That he was already free and fighting, however, was unexpected.
Look at all those men! How is he fighting them alone?
Alone and well. The majority were long bested, their bodies on the floor. Those who still stood began to edge closer through a cooperated effort, corralling him against the wall. From a distance, his expression appeared collected. Closer inspection proved something was not quite right. Oh.
His breathing is uneven.
Have you been wounded?
He was the same when he grabbed my wrist before mounting the carriage. Just how far did he run to ensure I wouldn't be where he stands now?
I must save him!
Not yet, Emily!
Kobayashi?
Running in without thinking won't save him. What if they captured you? Use you against him?
But we can't sit here!
Who said we were? Just who do you take me for?
Kobayashi flashed a smile.
I'm his assistant. I know a thing or two about assisting, you know. I won't be more than a minute.
Kobayashi took up his slingshot and drew back its long band. I could hear the strain of rubber being stretched to its limits. Farther, farther back, stopping. Deathly silence.
Akechi! I'm here!
He shouted and released the band of the slingshot, firing something into the crowd with great force. The diversion was a success.
Gah! What is this? My eyes! What's happening?
The men who had surrounded Akechi tumbled to the floor whilst clutching their faces. My god! Just what did you shoot?
One of my finest creations. Pellets packed with powdered mustard. They're meant to explode on impact. The dust hangs in the air a bit, but as you can see, the particles are enough of an irritant to eyes, nose, and throat to incapacitate anyone who comes in contact with it.
But what about Akechi? He's right where you shot the pellets.
He's fine. Just look.
So he is. It's as though you shot nothing at all.
Akechi! Are you alright?
Indeed, I am. I would have, however, appreciated you signaling your intent with greater clarity. It's fortunate that I considered you were going to use mustard pellets, but I'm here is too vague a warning to know for certain.
Well, you seem none the worse for wear, and that's what really matters. Can you take care of the rest?
Thanks to your assistance, I can.
Akechi swung his katana once more, hammering those who had managed to rise to their feet back to the ground. His form, as the back of his blade arced through the air, was nothing short of spectacular.
Emily! Get down!
What for? I turned upon Kobayashi's voice to see his slingshot drawn back again, now aimed squarely in my direction. Ah!
Gah!
Kobayashi loosened another projectile. No sooner had the band snapped than I heard a cry of pain behind me.
Never knew a butler could be so strong till I met you, Pendleton. How could you knock out a man that massive with a single punch?
He's secretly One Punch Man as well.
I'm uncertain I could do so without you affording the opportunity.
Pendleton! You didn't waste any time! Shifting around at last, I saw one of the criminals splayed on the floor, a knife fallen but a few lengths from his hand.
You must learn not to leave yourself exposed, my lady. A bullseye painted to your back would have been as equally plain for the enemy.
I'm so glad you're both here. Truly I am. The three of us then motioned to aid Akechi. It's nice to see Pendleton taking like an active role and not from the shadows. Like he's actually out in the open helping us. It's pretty cool. We reached him minutes later, and by then he was surrounded by the unconscious forms of the men he subdued.
Scotland Yard will be here before long.
Akechi knelt before one of the few who remained conscious. A walking stick lay on the ground beside the man. Windsor.
A question, if you can speak.
What is it?
As you escorted Miss Whiteley to the carriage, you deliberately walked slow to allow me to catch up with you. You appeared to look over your shoulder as you did so. Though I could deduce what you were trying to accomplish, the reason is a mystery to me. Why did you do it?
I knew that you were a friend. I noticed you conversing with her earlier. But the reason you caught up to me is the same as the reason I wasn't able to fight. The reason I lost my job. It's this lame leg of mine. I've always seen my leg as the source of all my misfortunes. What a strange feeling to have that challenged. This lame leg slowed my march towards a foolish error. Perhaps I feel as much because, for the first time, I experienced a warmth beyond measure in her.
I see.
Akechi's reply carried no stigma of pity or of blame, but simply quiet acceptance.
Emily, I regret what I've done to repay your act of kindness. I wish you to know, what I said when you saved me was no act. You may not believe so, but it was the truth.
I believe you. With all my heart, I believe you to be a genuine man.
You won't take me! I'll be damned if I'm going to spend the rest of my life in a moldy cell! What'll it be? How much will it cost for you to let me off? My coffers are fat with Noble's coin, I assure you. So go on! Name your price!
You disgust me. Keep quiet.
Ah!
His craven attempt at bribery was so repugnant that I could not contain my urge to slap him across the cheek. Go, Emily, go. You don't care one whit about the fear and suffering you've brought upon those you kidnapped, do you? Have you once thought of their families? And your methods! You forced those with no means to support themselves into your scheme. You placed a dear friend of mine in danger. Do you think you can buy your way out of trouble? Not with me. You're going to face the penalty for your crimes.
Blasted girl! Don't!
That will do.
He leant forwards and began to growl a counter, but Akechi and Kobayashi brandished their weapons in warning before he said anything. Thanks, boys.
Miss Whiteley, tempting as it was on my part, your reckless actions have produced nothing but a sting to your palm.
Though I should have liked to have given him a smack too.
Thanks, Kobayashi. You're both very kind. Shortly thereafter, Scotland Yard appeared to take the host of the ring into their custody. Pendleton and I escorted the boys to the dormitory by carriage.
Miss Whiteley.
Yes, Akechi?
I owe you an apology.
Do you? I considered several of our most recent encounters and found nothing which caused me offense.
I deemed it necessary under the circumstances, but to grab a woman's hand unbidden, to take your hand.
Aww. Man, we moved on from boob grabs to hand-holding. You'll have to see that development. Even if both were kind of unintentional. In that moment, Akechi seemed a different man entirely than during his battle with the kidnappers. He was timid, with cheeks burning and eyes granting attention to any place where I wasn't.
I needed your immediate attention, but there must have been other means of getting it. Perhaps by calling out to you first. I saw you faced with real danger, and I grew fearful and...
You have my congratulations for touching a girl by your own will, Akechi. Though I always suspected you would ask the girl first. Aren't you a bold one?
Akechi appeared completely flummoxed.
Don't misconstrue my intentions. I didn't grab her hand out of a man's desire. I didn't have a choice.
No desire at all? So you hated it? Well, you didn't have to say that in front of her. She has feelings, you know.
I meant no such thing. I chose to take her hand, and
man, Kobayashi is so good. It's like, just admit you want to kiss the girl. Catching himself, Akechi suddenly fell silent. Akechi?
At any rate, Miss Whiteley, I apologize for the confusion behind my actions today. If you will excuse me.
Akechi strode toward the dormitory with a quickened pace. He was done. So why did I want him to stay? Wait, Akechi!
Yes.
I chose this time to be the one to take his hand and stop him. Yeah, go girl, so bold! Ha! Holmes isn't the only dogged person we've met here.
Miss Whiteley?
You have all my thanks for saving me, Akechi. I've not even apologized for it. Here you are trying to apologize to me when I should be the one saying such things.
I would have to disagree.
Disagree as much as you like, but had I taken a moment to notice what was happening, then you would have never been in danger for my sake. If I can't grow beyond the woman I am today, I fear you'll never think to rely on me. You'll see me as worthless, or worse, a hindrance.
Why would you say that?
Akechi looked puzzled. Because I don't have your strength or Kobayashi's. I've been proven sheltered, and that's now posing a danger to those I care for. You're a diligent, rational mind, and then I'm... I looked away. I knew it lingered in my throat. I just had to admit it, but the words wouldn't leave me. Why? Why couldn't I say it aloud?
I feel compelled to admit something, Miss Whiteley. I bear no small distaste for those who belittle themselves in such a fashion. I cannot abide this.
I felt a squeeze round my fingers, but there was no blush to him, no timid nature, nor stammer. He was stern. The light in his eyes was so searching, so piercing, he may have bared every unspoken thought in my heart.
No matter how grim the trial, ultimately, only you have the power to rouse and propel yourself forwards. I've no doubts that one day, when you find yourself lost and don't know what to do, you will come to see this. In fact, I am certain of it. Until that day comes, you mustn't say or do anything that undermines your potential. In the eyes of one desperate for a place to call home, desperate for recognition in spite of being cast off and shunned time and again, your position is an enviable one indeed.
What? What was this? I saw a loneliness I didn't understand behind his spectacles. Was it right to ask? Should I leave it be? I wondered, all the while scrutinizing this hollow with the caution of passers-by approaching a broken gate in the dead of night. Akechi?
I spoke out of turn.
This came accompanied by a jolt of alarm, and he pulled away his hand. Aw, man, we made such good progress, though. Ugh.
It wasn't my place to see what I did. Please, pay it no mind. But if you would hear this, an earnest nature suits you more than self-pity. It's that same quality which saw you dash into a spar between men. You attract danger and cheer upon any provocation. You laugh when the world is ugly. This, to me, makes it difficult to leave you when the world takes your laughter away.
Huh? Dang, he's still getting me with those poetic sayings, though. This boy. Ugh, poetic riddles.
I've said enough. Have a pleasant night, Miss Whiteley.
Akechi then retired for the dormitory.
He always does this. Always spouts some claptrap without explanation.
When Akechi spoke of one desperate for a place to call home, did he mean himself?
Sorry, Emily. I can only go into so much detail.
A sadness possessed Kobayashi very suddenly.
Before we came here, Akechi was in some sort of... what's the right word? Dispute with his master in swordsmanship.
He was? The sadness only grew more pervasive. I listened.
Akechi's father is of the Shizoku, the former warrior class,
As you might expect, he's obsessed when it comes to his family's name and honor. When Akechi was very young, he was left in the care of his master by his father. That was the best thing for his future. So to Akechi, his master is every bit as much a father as his true father is. Now, it goes without saying that he instructed Akechi in the way of the sword, but he also taught him martial arts, made sure he received a quality education, and, as rare as they are in Japan, instructed him in how to use a gun. One day, Akechi intervened to save a child who was being threatened. Those responsible were members of the Kazoku, which are like the nobility you have here. Akechi then was pressured to take responsibility for resorting to violence against members of the nobility.
What does that mean?
Akechi knew his master would understand that he acted only to help someone in need. Or so he thought. But his master didn't see it that way. Instead, he rebuked him for drawing his blade and told him to go offer an apology. But Akechi couldn't bring himself to do it. It was most likely the first time he refused the behest of his master. The nobles had thrown the child a knife and made sport of pressuring him to take his own life in exchange for money to support his family. No reasonable person would blame Akechi. But his master drove Akechi out of the only home he had ever known. "You are no longer my student," he said, and his fate was decided.
That's horrible.
I thought I'd misheard when I was told. His master was always strict, but he was just as fair. He thought of Akechi like a son. No one stood behind his actions. His master cast him out. His family withdrew support. He was alone.
Aw, Akechi. But he did nothing wrong.
You and I can see that. But back home, the very act of opposing those of a higher standing is enough to mark you as a target for scorn. Akechi was ready to accept it, of course. He refused to turn from what he considered the right path. The punishment didn't matter. It was in the wake of that incident when it was decided we would be sent to London. Akechi hasn't said a word about his master since, but he must surely be dwelling on what happened even now. He must be. How much would it hurt you if someone you loved more than your own parents turned their back on you? The only person you ever relied on. Akechi said this of you, but he's the one who's prone to being reckless. He's often so calm on the outside that he doesn't know what to do once passion strikes him. It could be that impulsive passion that inspires him to put his soul to anything he does.
He works harder than anyone I know.
Yes, he does. He's been that way since the day we met. It makes life hell for me as his assistant, you know, but it makes me feel needed by him in this very odd sort of way. Don't tell him I said that. If he heard, he would work himself into a huff just to say I'm getting a big head. You won't say anything, will you? Swear it? You don't know the lecture I'll have to sit through. All right, until tomorrow.
Yes, until tomorrow. I bid him goodbye as he returned to the dorm after Akechi. I never thought he'd gone through such ordeals before this. The story refused to leave me. The more I wanted to push it out of my mind, the more it stayed, reciting itself again and again. Akechi was very serious when he took my hand, and he was so distant, too. Lonely. Can I do nothing to ease his pain? There wasn't a point in standing here. With that persisting dark message in my mind, I boarded the carriage where Pendleton was waiting. I expected peace and quiet once I was home. Not so with Pendleton. I'm like, did you forget your butler?
You nearly boarded a carriage with a stranger. Are you out of your mind? You seem nigh incapable of recognizing peril when it grins and extends its hand, my lady.
I hadn't even the time to digest all that had happened that day before Pendleton launched into one of his lectures.
Have you the faintest idea how readily you skip into harm's way?
I'm very sorry. My behavior was rash, and what I do affects more than me. What if Akechi had been hurt? I promise you, I'll take more care in the future.
Remember that promise, for I shall hold you to it.
This lecture had done nothing to erase the story I was told earlier. Pendleton?
Yes? I hope you don't expect to run along just because you learned your lesson. You can be assured any request for leniency will fall on deaf ears.
No, it isn't that. I was wondering if there are parents in the world who forsake their own children.
It is a cruel reality that, strong though ties of blood may be, they do not impart upon parents and children the ability to understand one another, nor do they preclude them drifting apart.
So blood is not enough.
Conflicts can and do arise between members of a family. Such feuds can lead even to murder. In truth, it is because members of a family are so close that the atmosphere is ideal for developing dark affairs between them.
I've envied those with living parents and relatives. I thought blood or marriage was enough for unconditional love, but I see the matter is far from simple.
I would suggest you exercise great care when choosing your future man. Yet, if you were blind to one with designs on the family's fortune and swept off your feet, I will be here to help you see clearly. He will be done away with the rubbish.
Good man, Pendleton. I would ask you not to do away with my future husband. I would rather you not, though, if it's all the same. Leaving the butler to his suitor-slaying stratagems. I like that. I walked on, his voice nattering at me from behind with every click of my heel. To be continued. Oh, that was great. What a great ending. Oh, we learned so much about Akechi in this one, too. Awesome. And now, the aspiring disciple. I was perusing the morning paper, as I always did each day after taking breakfast.
Something caught your attention, my lady.
You might say that. It says here a black magic cult was attempting to perform some manner of ritual beneath a London church.
Oh, really?
And what's more, it was discovered they were planning to use abducted children as ritual sacrifices. How awful. This isn't the first time this cult has done so and become front-page news, either.
Indeed. I've heard of them as well.
Pendleton nodded, preparing a tea set.
As I recall, many of the children were so inspired by the cult that they denied ever being taken against their will upon rescue, as though they were under some sort of spell.
What a terrible ordeal these incidents must be for the parents. Most of the victims were young boys from poor families. We are quite fortunate Scotland Yard found them before the ritual took place. My worry is that the majority of the cultists escaped capture. The very idea of them continuing their work makes my blood run cold. But you know, how much truth is there to this black magic?
Surely you're not developing an interest in curses and witchery. Unless there might be some unfortunate soul whose death you seek.
What is it with you and death? You're too obsessed with death, Pendleton. Pendleton stared with an exaggerated look of fear and disbelief. Goodness, no! Don't even speak of such dark things so early in the morning. I've no interest in these occult dabblings.
You say so now, but I remember you once said something that suggested otherwise. You said that, if you could have but a single wish, you would wish to be endowed with magic to grant yourself 100 wishes.
I was a child, Pendleton.
I found myself taken aback at the base avariciousness inherent in your wish, and grew ever concerned for your future.
Well, you needn't worry. Life has shown me that dreams and wishes aren't empty hopes one patiently waits to be fulfilled, but things one brings to fruition oneself.
Well, back to your black magic question.
Oh, not before you respond to my counter. Ignores her and continues.
Black magic is dangerous business. In its shadow often lingers large sums of money. It is not unheard of for ideology and religion to serve as veneers to conceal the worst of criminal activity. Scotland Yard has no end of trouble working to unravel their mysteries. Locations such as churches and graveyards are popular amongst people of that sort. Some claim the passage of souls is the most prevalent there.
I'm curious, Pendleton.
Of what?
Have you ever wished a death curse upon someone?
Only God knows for certain. I think I shall simply leave it to your imagination, my lady.
At times, Pendleton's smile could be an instrument of nightmares, much like it was in this moment.
As you've taken an interest in souls and specters, may I presume you've heard the story of the ghost ship that appears every night upon the Thames?
A ghost ship?
Piqued your interest, have I? The story goes that after London's bells ring the midnight toll, an unidentified ship breaks through the fog. It is said to be crewed by the shades of warriors who perish with ambitions left unfulfilled. By night, they sail the river and keep watch over London. Some also warn that children who don't do as their parents tell them will have their souls stolen away by these ghostly warriors whilst they sleep.
I think I've heard enough, Pendleton. This is just one of those tall tales parents tell their children to keep them in line.
But where one sees smoke, there must be fire, no? If you find yourself near the river in the deep of night, you really can hear the sound of children crying somewhere.
I said that was enough! Please! The nerve of this man, always trying to rile me in some way or another. His lips simply curled into an eerie smile. Or perhaps cryptic would be more apt.